It's now time to introduce our main speaker, THERESA.
Is this my water? All right. My water. Good evening. My name's THERESA. I'm an alcoholic. Need we never be organized? This is a fun meeting. Woo! My goodness. I'm nervous. I'm shaking. My heart's pounding. I always got to puke, go to the bathroom, pee, think my period's going to start. Just give me a minute. Ooh. I always say that's God coming in. THERESA getting out of the way. Oh, goodness. It is always an honor and a privilege to speak in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I always think about a girl like me to be asked. You know, I've never sat out in those rooms and said, I can't wait till the day comes that I get up on that big old podium in front of hundreds of people. Oh, my goodness. I'm just amazed. And so it is an honor. I'd like to welcome anyone who is new. Welcome home. We've been praying for you. You know, in every meeting all over the world, there is a moment of silence and prayer that is done for those who are still sick and suffering, and that is for you. And that is what I share with the newcomer. Don't ever take that for granted. But for the grace of God, you have been lifted up and brought into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't ever forget your last drunk. Keep coming back and let us love you till you can learn to love yourself. And I love to acknowledge the old-timers, the trailblazers. You know, the newcomer is the most important person in the room, but the old-timer is the heart of this program. And I cannot say enough for those of you who continuously keep coming back, holding that seat, emptying the ashtrays, or emptying out the garbage and setting the example of how to live this thing. And I still want what you have. I still watch you, and I want to thank you. Happy birthday to all those who took cakes. I love to see people who take cakes and all the friends, and we turn into productive members of society, and we're now human beings rather than human doings. And I get to watch the product of this program when people take cakes, and it just fills my heart. So happy birthday. I'm going to share very quickly in a general way what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. And what it used to be like for me, I also like to share with folks, not only am I an alcoholic, I'm also an adult child of an alcoholic, I'm an Al-Anon, I'm an incest survivor, a survivor of domestic violence, a workaholic, a codependent, so I got a whole lot of issues. I came in with a whole lot of problems. Got a lot of problems. I was born addicted to this lovely disease. My mother drank and used when I was in her belly. I came out needing it, asking for it, wanting it. It was put in my bottle and on my gums, and I drank every day, all day, for 25 years of my life until I came into these rooms 16 years ago. I didn't know another life other than that life. It was normal. My heroes were crackheads, heroin, addicts, and those were my cousins and my uncles, and I looked up to them. I love when my uncles came to babysit because they would nod and pass out, and I could take their money, and I could leave. I love my uncles to come and babysit. I was verbally abused, emotionally abused, physically abused, sexually abused by both men and women. My body never belonged to me. I was spiritually abused, everything you can think of. We talk about incomprehensible demoralization, but you know what? That was my life. I lived my life that way. Thank God for alcohol. That was my buddy. That was my companion. That was my friend. I checked out of my body a long time ago. I lived flatline the moment I came out of my mother's womb. And I was never present for anything. My life is, the longer I stay, sober, the pieces come together, and I get to remember some things. You talk about blackouts. My life was a blackout. I run into people, and they go, "Don't you remember me?" Not a clue. Not a clue. One girl was like, "Don't you remember you taught me Spanish for a year?" Not a clue. I got into unhealthy relationships. I left home at the age of 14 because I was grown at the age of 14 because, you see, I didn't play hopscotch, Barbie doll, jump rope. My friends were always 15, 20 years my senior. I went with a man who was 11 years my senior. He was 26, I was 14. You couldn't have told me we weren't on the same level. I was balancing checkbooks when I was 7. I had my own business at the age of 14. And he would beat me on a daily basis. You couldn't have told me that wasn't love. He loved me. He beat me. That's love. And I drank Southern Comfort. And I would tell him, are you finished yet? So I could finish watching this television program. You ain't tired? And I would drink my Southern Comfort. And that was my life. I held people hostage. I was selfish. It was all about me. I dressed up my outsides. I made sure I always looked cute and pretty so you couldn't see that I was empty on the inside. I stole, I took, I ran havoc in your life and it didn't matter. I didn't care. You gave me money, I never paid you back. You shouldn't have gave it to me in the first place. You knew I was broke to begin with. That was my attitude. You expect me to pay you? I didn't have no money. That's why I asked you for some. You the one that's stupid. Oh, it was just terrible. Just rude and nasty. You had a nasty mouth on me. I was angry and I didn't even know it. I was bitter and didn't even know it. I was spiritually bankrupt and I didn't even know it. So that was my life for about good 24 years. Oh yes, I got in risky situations. I always took chances. I went off with strangers. I was living on the edge. I was having fun. I loved going into bars and waving my hand like Miss America when I came in. You know, everybody know my name. They're always glad I came. Felt so special because I walked in, you already had my favorite drink waiting for me. Oh my goodness. It was fun for a long time. And then something happened when I was about 24 years old. I was waking up with Cousin It. Now, you know, I slept with a lot of Cousin It's before in my life. Slept with a lot of Cousin It's. But this time, I noticed, and it tripped me out. I was walking into the bar, and I was hearing people say, look what the trash brought in. Now, maybe they had been saying that for a while, and I hadn't heard it, but now I was hearing it. You talk about this thing called remorse. And my stomach returned. I heard an old-timer say, and I continuously repeat it, and it has stuck with me. She said, incomprehensible demoralization is a whole lot of things, but when you can't get drunk and you can't get sober, is the worst place for an alcoholic like me to be in. And something started happening to me. And I was trying to manage and control, and I kept saying it's going to be different tomorrow, and it wasn't. And I'm not going to do that again, but I kept doing it. I stopped looking in the mirror because I didn't like who was looking back at me. And I started coming up with some bright ideas. Like, I'm not going to work no more. Let them beg me to come back. Needless to say, I would show up drunk. I did a half job, but they need to beg me to come back. And I don't feel like paying the rent. I don't see why you have to. That don't seem fair. You know you gotta live somewhere. Why they charging you money? My attitude was, let them come and get me. They came and got me. Came up with other ideas like, why do I have lights? And I love my other alcoholic and addict friends. You know, the ones that support one another. See, because I was the type of friend that if something happened to you and you OD'd, I'd put you in the closet. Okay, because I ain't got time to be going nowhere. Those type of friends. And they go, yeah, you don't need no lights. We could do a lot with that money. So I turned off the lights. And why do I have a phone? You here? Who I need to call? Yeah, you ain't gotta call nobody. And at this time, I had been in a 7-year relationship, and he was sick of the havoc I caused, the disrespect that I would do, and the nonsense and the way I would behave. And I came home one day, and the whole place was empty, and he only left me with a brass bed, no mattress. And I came and put a blanket in the middle of that and said, I'll sleep there. I can handle the situation. And I remember my uncle came to visit me. I had an eviction notice on my door. I had no furniture, no lights, and no phone, and he asked me how I was living. And I responded like the typical alcoholic should. I was like, what? I gotta have lights like everybody else? This is my design, okay? This is my business. You need to mind your business. I want it like this. But when he walked out of the door, something happened. I fell to my knees and I started screaming. There must have been something inside of me that knew I should not have been living like that. And I just started screaming and screaming. And there was some people in the house and they said, hurry up, give her one. And they passed me a drink. And I drank it down and went, I was like, oh, I don't know what that was about, but we will not be doing that again. That was like major breakdown, scary. And I was on a mission to never let that happen, and I was unsuccessful. And I would say all good things must come to an end. And my life was getting bad, and I jumped back and forth from my dad's house to my grandmother and was arrogant, dared them to question me how I was living and what I was doing, even though I was in their house. This time I was on my 4th child. I had lost 3 prior. My womb was always polluted. I would drop children. Many times I'll sit on the toilet and drop them and get up, clean myself, and keep going. That was my life. Didn't think twice about it. And now I'm on my 4th child in another relationship. And I don't know why this is my bottom, but this is my bottom. I find it ironic because I've had guns pointed to my head and all kinds of ugly situations. But this was it for me. Him and I were together that day. We left one another. I forgot something. I went back to where he was, and he was sleeping with a guy. And it wasn't kind of, sort of. They were in it. I looked at him. I said, I guess you want to be with him. You don't want to be with me. Now, I don't know why that's my bottom, but that was my bottom. After that, I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I find that ironic, but that's my bottom. I find it quite funny. I left there and I lived in Queens at the time. Yes, I'm a New Yorker, Puerto Rican, so please don't tell me I sound like Rosie Perez. And I was living in Queens at the time, and I walked, and it was on Parsons Boulevard, and I ended up in a church. And I sat down in that church, and I remember it like yesterday. I felt this energy in the church. And I said that prayer that we all say. That moment of clarity, that moment of desperation. I don't ever want to forget that moment. I said, God, please allow me to feel the energy that I feel in this church inside of me. And it was peace. I didn't want it for a year. I didn't want it for months. I just wanted a second. I just needed a second just to be still. Shh. I left there, went to my dad's house. I told him I had a problem. It wasn't like he didn't know it. And my dad said, with all the love that a father can have for his child, he is watching me kill myself, and there's nothing he could do about it. He said, you're standing in the middle of a crossroad. You're heading down 3 directions. You're so close to them, you could taste them, and you could smell them. And that's jails, mental institutions, and death. But there's another road, this thing called recovery. You don't know anything about it. It's dark and mysterious. I don't know anything about it. But why don't you give it a try? And if it doesn't work out, the other 3 will be waiting for you. And now I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because of tradition that you have, which is attraction rather than promotion. I had a mom in recovery and a cousin, and they lived out here in California. And I used to come to visit. At no time did I ever think the seed was being planted, that I was paying attention. You know, they say recovery begins the very first time one alcoholic talks to another. And I had no idea that recovery had begun for me a long time ago. I would come to the meeting, sit in the back, laugh about you guys. I would drink before the meeting, during the meeting, after the meeting. I would go to musician picnics. I would hang out with you, and I was loaded the whole time. I did not think I was paying attention. But when I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, all of a sudden, the faces of the people in these rooms started coming in front of me. I remembered that belly laughter. I remembered the gleam in your eye, the smile on your faces, the warmth. I remembered how you said, how you doing, baby? I remember you never shunned me, you never laughed at me, shook your head at me, or tried to shove a pamphlet down my throat. Because had you had done that, my ego and my arrogance was so huge that I've been willing to die out there before I came in here and proved you right. And I got on a Greyhound bus and headed out to beautiful sunny California, where I thought everybody was sober. California is the sober place to be. I detoxed on that bus, I threw up on that bus, I shook on that bus, I sweated on that bus, I hallucinated on that bus. I don't want to do that again. That was painful. I woke up in El Paso, Texas. That's where I had my last drink. I couldn't take the shakes anymore. I got back on the bus, continued to detox, and I arrived in downtown Los Angeles. That's when my mom picked me up, and she took me directly to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, Crenshaw, Lano. That's my home. I was wearing a size 1 pair of pants with 2 pants underneath with a huge sweatshirt. 4 months pregnant, the baby had already died in my belly. There was no heartbeat. I came into the room with my mom. We walked halfway in, and my mom turned around to walk out. I asked her where she was going, and she said, "This is as far as I can go with you." And she turned me over to the very people who had saved her life. I always say I feel like a baby in a baby basket left at the doorsteps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why I get emotional when I talk about the old-timers and those who came before me. It was you who picked up that basket. And was I terrified? Absolutely. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know what I was thinking, and that was the whole thing. I wasn't thinking. That's how I ended up here. And I sat in the back. I wasn't going to stand up as a newcomer. I wanted to blend in and act like I'd been here a while. And there was a woman taking a cake, Marcy. She's passed on now. And when she got done taking the cake, she walked to the back of the room, and she said, "Girl, you will stand up and state your name and your disease." That was my introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. She took me from the back of the room and she sat me in the front. And she said, "You will sit down, shut up, and listen. You take the cotton out of your ears, you put it in your mouth, because your best thinking got you here." And I was like, whoa, this is going to be deep. Oh, my goodness. I talk about my experience when I first came in. I got sober in Crenshaw, Lano, and I was back to basics in 9604, and I'm really grateful for the way they treated me. They gave me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they told me it was a textbook. It was meant to be studied. It was not a novel. I had to look up every other word other than and, is, they, them, because I was too smart for myself. They knew I was. You see, I'm self-will run riot, and they knew it. And they had to teach me a thing or two. Because you see, if you gave me an inch, I'd take a mile. I'm a good manipulator, and I play games. And I began to sit down, and you told me to listen like the dying only could. And I began to listen to you, and you took away my excuses. You disrobed me. I heard stories from this podium. I heard people share things that I thought I would never talk about. I saw me, and you were my mirror, and you reflected so many things back to me. I had nothing left but to look at me. I crawled in here, you were the last thing that I had, and you gave me hope, and I hadn't had that in a long time. And I gravitated to that. I heard that you want what we have. What was it that you had that I wanted? Was it your outfit? Was it your hairstyle? The car you were driving? Was it some of you, your attitudes? No. You knew how to stay sober 24 hours, and I didn't. I had to concede to my innermost self that I was truly alcoholic. That was the first step. That's what you told me to do. I looked at my relationship, and I knew alcohol had kicked my ass. You see, I didn't have a problem with a higher power when I came here. I had a higher power, and it was booze. Booze told me when to wake up in the morning or when to go to bed, who to hang out with, who not to hang out with, if I was going to work, if I wasn't going to go to work. It dictated every area of my life, and it was no longer working. Where was I going? What was I going to do? I don't know how to live life. I had been anesthetized for 24 years, and I was thawing out, and I was petrified. And so I gravitated to the promises. I heard promises from here. I gravitated to words like joy. I heard you say joy. I never knew that. I never experienced that before in my life. I heard freedom. I never knew what that was. I heard peace. What a concept. I heard serenity. Oh, my goodness. I have taken this program literal. You see, I lived in those chairs. The last time I had an opportunity to think was one time. I said, all I need to do is get a job, find an apartment, and go to those meetings. That was the last time I had an opportunity to think around here. My mother's sponsor showed up at a friend's house I was at. She knocked on the door, introduced herself, and said, "I am your mother's sponsor. And you will not come to California to drive your mother crazy, because if you drive her crazy, you drive me crazy. So you need to pack your stuff, and we're sending you back to New York City." That was the last time I ever thought on my own. They didn't let me share around here for a year. I would raise my hand, and they'd say, "What you got to talk about?" All you know is what it was like, what it was like, what it was like, what it was like. Sit down somewhere. Smart ass. I love it. Tell me about myself. I am grateful nobody played with me, because you know what? I didn't play with drinking. I'm a hard player. Don't play with me up in here. Talk to me straight. Talk to me clear. If you would have played, oh, sweetie, just keep coming back and whatever you want to do. Oh, my goodness, I would have had a ball with you. Talk to me. They told me either you want to live or you want to die. You either live in your disease or you live in your recovery. They didn't let me misbehave. I told them, I go, you know I'm an alcoholic. They'd be like, oh, no. We laid some tools down at your feet. You need to pick them up and apply them to your life. I had to take the steps off the wall and learn how to apply them, and they told me to do it. You know, that's pretty much been my experience. I was just taught to do it. You ain't got to process. You ain't got to figure out. It don't have to make sense to you. Just do it. In the 12 and 12 in step 5, it tells me that all 12 steps are contrary to my natural desires. That means that everything you asked me to do here won't make sense to me. Isn't that something? They told me you ain't got to wrap your head around what I'm telling you. Just do it. Ain't that something? Do it and see what happens. And I am so grateful that I became childlike. And I just said, what do I have to lose? I'm going to do precisely what you have done, exactly the way you're doing it, and let's see what happens. And oh boy, you have never lied to me. I came here full of shame, broken. I had to learn how to be a lady. I had to come to meetings, you know, half naked and fishnet stockings and all that cute stuff. Somebody out there was always going, uh-oh. Old time I had to be like, look like somebody got some issues. Where your clothes at, girl? You ain't got to do that today. How else would I have learned? I remember talking about, oh, you know, I never prostituted before. That's a yet for me. Women be like, oh, really? Let's see. You never went to a club, smiled at a guy, he bought you a drink, you went home with him. I was like, yeah, like you a hoe. You a hoe. Okay? Don't get it twisted. Somebody out there always finds out they're a hoe. My goodness, I only have a few minutes, and I'm going to briefly talk about, with the few minutes that I have, what it's like today. If I can wrap this up in a minute and a half of what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, I can go on forever. You know, people talk about big book thumpers and all the quotes, and I tell folks, I'm sorry, I don't have another language. This is all I know. I love the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the 12 and 12. The answer to the first step is in the next step. The answer to that step is in the next step. I understood what I was doing when I took the third step prayer. I said, relieve me of bondage of me, and I got a clean house. I'm huge on cleaning house. I cannot get connected to a higher power. I no longer wanted to be blocked by the sunlight of the Spirit. I wanted to find freedom. I got a clean house. And you taught me how to do that. The traditions taught me how to have relationships with other people. What's going on today? I teach DUI classes. That's fun. I love sponsoring women. My goodness, women, you are my mirror. You are my shadow. We have danced the dance. Of course, I didn't like you when I got here. I didn't like my mother. When I saw your beauty, I became uncomfortable because I didn't see beauty in me. When I saw your strength, it intimidated me. I had to get honest about that. Boy, have we danced. Recently, my mom's had stroke. She's going through Alzheimer's. My dad has emphysema and Parkinson's. My brother became Rambo when he was getting divorced, and his wife went and had an affair, and he has 2 children I now take care of. Then he also got this terrible illness they couldn't diagnose. They told me he was dying, but for the grace of God, he is home today, but he still has the illness and is trying to be treated. I get to go around the world and carry the message of hope and my experience, strength, and hope in Alcoholics Anonymous, and everywhere I go, it is home. As you are my family, Recently, I just came back from Hawaii. I had a couple of sponsees. I have a couple of sponsees in Hawaii, and I had the privilege of speaking there a couple of years ago and developed some wonderful relationships. And a sponsee of mine talked to me on the phone for an hour and a half, and in none of her conversation did she say she was planning on taking her life. And she hung up and she hung herself. That was just last week. And I just came back from Hawaii, and I went to support the women, and I am just so grateful, and I just want to quickly share on that experience and all the experiences along the way. The way I'm able to get through things is I get to put one hand in God and one hand in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor told me I needed to respect her decision. Whether I agree with it, whether I understood it, I need to respect it. I'm grateful that I know how to pick up the phone and tell somebody how I'm feeling, because you told me I'm as sick as my secrets. My disease is centered in my thinking. I have a disease of a threefold nature. You ain't got to dance with everybody, but you got to dance with somebody. I learned to have a higher power in my life that is greater than anyone or anything today. And I tap into that source of power and I go in, because it's an inside job. I can look cute all day long, but what's going on in the inside? How am I living? If you a fly on the wall in my house, how am I living? Is what you taught me to do. And I put one foot in front of the other. And I ask for help and direction when I'm not sure. I called my cousin and she said, you know, this is pretty much going to challenge your relationship with divine order, with God, and with death and eternal life, and it has. I get to respect her decision, I get to grieve, I get to cry, and I get to be humbled through the experience, and I get to find forgiveness and compassion. That is what you taught me. And there's so much, but I just want to end with, I am a woman today of integrity. You have taught me grace. I have peace and serenity and joy and happiness and courage. I have steadfastness. You've taught me the gift of forgiveness, compassion. Oh my goodness, what a precious gift. It is a daily reprieve contingent upon my spiritual maintenance. Sobriety is a gift, and it's up to me to take action and more action. And that's what you taught me. And I'm just, you know, I'm full of gratitude. I'm sad. But recently, my sponsor had told me the reason why I'm not in turmoil and struggling so hard through all these experiences this last year is because she said, welcome, you have been rocketed into the fourth dimension. Is that not what this work is all about? You have taught me how to live life on life terms, and for that I am truly grateful. I want to stay teachable, humble, open, honest, and willing. Thank you so much.